I love the look of 16mm film, and there have been a lot of amazing movies shot on this format, from Leaving Las Vegas, The Wrestler, Half Nelson, and more recently Red Rocket. These are just some movies that come to mind, but there's something so special about 16mm film. It's not quite as gritty as 8mm, it's not quite as clean as 35mm. It's like a Goldilocks middle, and it's just perfect. But you can now achieve this look using post software, and that's something I talk about here on the channel, is the ability to create these film-like looks digitally. Now, one of my favorite cameras ever is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera Original. And I was recently reunited with this camera just because there is something so special about this camera. And what could you say about this camera that hasn't been said 1,000 times, especially here on YouTube by some very talented creators who go into much deeper depth about the pros and cons of this camera. But there are some cons to this camera, like the SD cards are very picky and the battery life. So wouldn't it be great if we got an updated version of this camera? A lot of people were hoping that Blackmagic would release an actual update to this camera, not just one that's called the Pocket but doesn't actually fit in your pocket, but one that's actually a super 16mm size. And I think they did respond to this camera, and I have an opinion, and I want to talk about that a little later. But right now, if you wanted to shoot on a 16mm style camera, what are your options? Alternative number one, the Sony RX0 or RX02. Now, let me be upfront that this camera is 8-bit. And if you can't get over that fact, that nothing I'm about to say is going to convince you. But if you are open-minded and you like the challenges that 8-bit brings you, then you might be astounded at how beautiful of an image that this camera can give you. Every time I shoot with this camera and I see it in my computer, I am just blown away at how beautiful the image is, especially from the size of the camera to the quality you get out of it. And I think, unfortunately, the camera was lumped into the action camera category because I think this camera provides you way better image quality than something like a GoPro. This camera is actually a pocket camera, and I'm not going to do the obligatory shot of me putting this in my pocket. You can obviously see that this can fit in my pocket. But now, from what I understand, also this camera has a sensor size that is bigger than the Pocket OG, and I might be wrong on that, but from my research, this is what it looked like to be the truth, which is cool. But it does not have an interchangeable lens. It has a fixed Zeiss lens, which is very nice and sharp, but it is f4, but you're still able to achieve shallow depth of field. It doesn't allow you to shoot 10-bit, does not have RAW options, but it can deliver some very nice looking images, and you have that 16mm style sensor inside of it. Alternative number two, 16mm mode. Now, I know that the Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera has something called a 16mm mode, which essentially just crops in on its sensor closer. So if you're into 16mm lenses, which I haven't fully explored, but that's an option to be able to utilize those lenses. Some other cameras, I think the Red camera also has a 16mm mode that you can utilize, but that's yet another option. It's not truly shooting on a 16mm size sensor, but that's something that is available. Alternative number three, do it yourself. Now, I follow a channel here on YouTube called Alt-Cine, and I really love this channel. I love the guy who runs it, his personality. He takes like older cameras and then he rehouses them in 3D printed designs that he does. And they're just fantastic. It's great that he breathes new life into these old cameras that still have really good image quality. But from what I understand, he's currently working on something with CinePi, and CinePi is its own separate project. It's basically an open source project to allow users to create their own 16mm digital camera. Another note about the CinePi is that it utilizes a Sony sensor that is 16mm size and dual gain. I just wanted to edit and interject here. The original CinePi, I think, utilized an 8mm sensor, but in the new CinePi video descriptions, there seems to be a new 16mm sensor. But again, this whole CinePi project is a deep rabbit hole of information, so apologies if I'm getting something wrong. But anyways, here's me explaining dual gain sensors because it's still relevant. And that is not to be confused with something called dual ISO. Dual gain is different. It's more like HDR video. So it's taking like the bright parts of the image and the dark parts of the image and combining them. I don't fully understand how it does this, but from what I understand, dual gain has such a wonderful film-like quality to it. Super exciting. And while I'm not the type of person that likes to tinker around with stuff, it is an option for people who like to do that. I just like a camera that's just ready to go and allows me to just go out and shoot. There is another company called Octopus Cinema that I heard is working on a 16mm digital camera. I don't know much about this company, but if you follow their Instagram, they update the status on the project. From what I understand, they are doing something similar to CinePi, but it's going to be a camera that it's going to be ready to go. Again, I don't know much about this company. I don't know if they'll actually deliver, but what they are advertising that this camera can do is super exciting. Alternative number 4, find old digital 16mm cameras. Of course, I already talked about the OG Pocket, but there's also the Blackmagic Micro, which allows you to shoot 60 frames a second. And then, of course, there's something called the digital BOLEX, which is not really financially viable for everybody. It is very expensive now from when it originally came out. And I think it's because it's very rare. And also there is a CCD sensor in this camera, which is also rare. And from what people say is it creates a different kind of organic look. And that's very unheard of because most cameras nowadays are CMOS sensors. So seeing a CCD sensor, makes this a very sought after camera, which is why the prices for these used cameras are really high. It's not practical to go get one of these older 16mm cameras because like I said, there's a lot of negatives to them. But if you really want to get something that has that look right away, like the OG or the Micro, they don't require a lot of work to create a beautiful image. There's something really special about these original Blackmagic cameras. Now, back to the original question. Will Blackmagic ever release an update for this original camera? Something that's actually pocketable? Well, I think they already did respond to this camera. I remembered listening to the No Film School podcast that was interviewing Grant Petty, and he had this to say.
You see a lot of our readers kind of start with like a Blackmagic Pocket 4K or something.
Yeah.
And then they kind of like graduate upwards as they get bigger jobs.
It's a good way to do it.
Need more.
Like you can try it no risk in some ways. Like even Blackmagic camera on the iPhone, that's free. Give that a try. Learn some of the functionality. Okay, now I might upgrade to something, or maybe not. It might be fine. Like it's hard to tell. I think I like the fact that Blackmagic camera gives you a zero cost option to get into cinematography. And you can work your way up from there.
So this is just my opinion. Who knows what Blackmagic is working on or what they'll release in the future. But I think that Blackmagic's response to this OG Pocket was the Blackmagic app. And it's very bittersweet because, yes, these phones are super good quality now. The fact that an iPhone shoots ProRes and a grandma has access to ProRes video, it's just crazy to me. At the end of the day, they're still not super 16mm size sensors. They don't have interchangeable lens mounts. And if you're old-fashioned like me, I just like my camera to do one thing and one thing well, and not to be distracted with all the other things that a phone can bring. And there's something very special about that Pocket OG because it's just very good and very simplistic, and it's just good at just doing one thing. There's definitely a desire for that type of camera. Now, who knows what is going to happen if Blackmagic will someday surprise us with a wonderful updated sequel to the OG, something like a Blackmagic Pocket OG 2 Judgment Day. That would be a fantastic day, but we don't know. And so right now, these are, I feel like, my options from what I understand. There might be stuff that I overlooked, but that's for what I understand is available to us if you want to go deeper and shoot on an actual 16mm size camera. Now, if you're not obsessed with 16mm cameras like I am, but you just want to achieve a film look digitally, I have some videos on my channel that you might be interested in.